Hi people, me again of course, as always Andros usual, Moino Ravenberg. As you can tell based on the header of the video, I am going to discuss briefly the benefits of habitual behavior, especially when it comes to the occult. Now, something that I have already brought up in the past, but not as an individual subject, more as a sideline. Habits are important. Habits are a good thing. It's a good thing to have habits and to do things in a habitual manner. The way that you do things, the frequency at which you do them, and everything that is around it, everything around it, makes it so that you're capable of doing it in a more flexible and upgraded manner and or fashion, to put it that way. In short, doing something in a repetitive manner or doing the same thing over and over again is beneficial, especially in the occult, within the context or under the premise of you being better, or with having that as an outcome, better put. If you do something in a repetitive fashion or manner, you take a shower, you get dressed, etc., etc., then you automatically familiarize yourself mentally, so spiritually, with that action, and by proxy, materially, thereby making it so that you can improve either up to a certain extent or just infinitely, in a manner of speaking, improve whatever it is that you're doing, improve your habit. The reason, for example, that you're at peace and that you feel familiar with your surroundings and your environment, for example, the house you live in or wherever you live, is because when you first came to live there, obviously you had to orientate yourself, you had to familiarize yourself with an unfamiliar environment. But after living there for a while, you know exactly where what is, how things function. You live in a neighborhood and you know exactly, for example, when the trash pickup comes by, you know whether there is going to be busy traffic or no traffic and on which days that is present. You're familiar with everything, the same way that all of us, okay, are familiar with, for example, our abodes, where we leave things, etc. I, for example, am familiar where I leave my cell phone when I go to charge it. I'm familiar with where my clothes are, how they're arranged, because these are my habits. And by doing it in a repetitive fashion, day in, day out, to the point where you almost ignore it, it comes to you impulsively. It makes it so that your lifestyle or way of living is optimized. People, for example, one of the most important factors for why people love their country is because the country they live in, regardless of whether they were born there or whatever the deal may be, or whether they simply lived there for an extensive amount of time, so longer than a year or two, makes it so that they're familiar with things and they grow accustomed to it. They're familiar with the inner and outer workings, or just plain innings and outings of that environment, the environment in question being their nation. So everything. They know the habits of certain people, they know neighborhoods, they know what's going to happen in, for example, a certain situation, they know what's going to happen around election time, and it just goes on and on and on. Just an example. And again, you can see how important that is. And this especially is applicable to the occult. It's when you do things in a repetitive manner, when it comes to dealing with energy, that with spiritual energy obviously, that you're capable of not only familiarizing yourself with it, but getting accustomed to it. And thereby you can make any improvements and updates if necessary. The same way that you use a cell phone, for example, if you just bought a cell phone and you've never owned this particular type of cell phone, then there will be certain things that you'll need to get used to. In short, you'll have to get used to the operating system as a whole, the OS. If I, for example...
Right now, you've got a new message.
Yeah, just ignore that. Yeah, blah, 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 go away. Yeah, sorry. If you, for example, I've never owned an iPhone for personal reasons. If I bought an iPhone, it would take me excluding my natural affinity towards technology and how skilled I am at it, let alone the experience I have in technology overall throughout my entire life because of dealing with it. If you exclude that from a neutral base perspective, it would take me a while. It would take me maybe like a week or two to familiarize myself with the operating system of an iPhone, like just with the iOS, with iOS. You see my point? Whereas, because I've been an Android user all my life, and specifically pertaining to, for example, Samsung Galaxy phones, I know I can buy a Samsung Galaxy phone and I can easily already go right away because I have relevant experience in that field. I know how the operating system works by default. So this, especially, like I said, this applies to the entire world, but especially in relation to the occult. Like I've already said in the past, for people that have followed me for a long time, one of the main reasons for why, for example, a cleansing ritual works so effectively is because it has already been used and is still being used by a tremendously high amount of people from an individual perspective. Like a simple ritual such as the old school Golden Dawn ritual of the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, abbreviated LBRP, as well as the banishing ritual of the hexagram. These rituals are potent because these rituals are old, they have a considerable amount of experience, like in longevity, like durability, because they've been used for what? They've been used for decades, a century even, or centuries, you name it. And they've been used by how many people? They've been used throughout time, throughout the ages, by hundreds of thousands of people, millions even. All of that creates a collective sense of energy. It makes the ritual as a whole potent because the energy that is generated as an outcome of performing that ritual automatically makes it so that it's heavily potent because of the aforementioned reasons. That's why. That's what makes it so effective. So it's the same thing. That's why when you, for example, know someone, and this applies to, for example, spirits that you work with as an occultist, as well as people in daily life. For example, I've been married to a woman for 10 years. I know what she's like. I know, what makes her tick because I've observed her for the past 10 years. I've observed her since we got married. I know what her habits are. I know, like, down to the smallest of details. I know that she's a late sleeper. She doesn't like to wake up early. I know that she likes, for example, all the lights on inside the house. I know that she doesn't like spicy food, and she adversely likes fluid foods more, things like soup and related. It just goes on because I have experience with her. And in the occult, it's the same thing. When you have extensive experience with like an entity or any kind of energy that you utilize for your own benefit or just for overall beneficial purposes, then you already know what it's like. You work with Spirit A, you already know that what Spirit A's energy feels like. You already know, what kind of side effects, if any, it has on you, whether it be beneficial or otherwise. You already know essentially what that spirit sounds like, as in the voice you hear when you interact with that spirit. You're aware of the physical appearance that spirit takes, everything. You already know how that spirit works in terms of bringing about consistent results for you. And it just goes on and on and on and on. You're familiar with the whole process because of experience. So you can see how important habitualness is in the world, or habituality, whatever. You see how important it is to be habitual. That's why I also prefer things that way personally. That's why I, generally speaking, don't like things like moving into a different house and anything like that, because then you have to start over again with orientation. I mean, if it absolutely has to be done, no problem. If it's worth it in the long run, obviously no problem. It's a no-brainer. But a minor drawback is that you need to familiarize yourself with everything again. You move into a different house, you need to familiarize yourself with the inner and outer workings of that house and how things work and etc., etc. People also apply that to their workplace. You work somewhere. The drawback of working somewhere else is that you have to get used to the way things work in that company again. Whereas if you've worked for a company for 5 years, then you already know what all of your colleagues are like. You already know what John, Max, Linda, and all the others are like. The habits they have, whether they like you or not, or whether they're simply neutral towards you. You already know what your manager or boss is like. Down to the smallest of details, you know, for example, that your workplace has a specific smell attached to it, whether it's like a good smell or a bad smell or whatever, or anything else in between. And it just goes on like that. You can see how important habituality is. Familiarity within the context of which I explained down into utmost detail pertaining to the entire world makes it so that you master it because you're already familiar with it. Okay, you're accustomed to it, and that level of customization, I want to say, makes it so that you're capable of making any kind of beneficial modifications or adjustments where need be, thereby making it that you're even more accustomed to what you're more accustomed to said environment or said subject in question. That is all. Bye bye.